The JLT Cold Air Intake kit is a good option for those of you out there that are searching for a cold air intake for 2015 and newer GT Mustang that requires a tune, so it'll not only provide the most performance gain possible, but it'll also give a classic look under the hood. This intake has an open airbox design, but it keeps the direct cold air feed that Ford created in the grille. So this is more of a true cold air setup than some of the other options that you have out there, since it does receive air from outside of the car. When it comes to the install, this is a simple one. It's a 1 out of 3 wrenches in the difficulty meter. You can plan on spending about an hour to get this installed. We spun the car in the dyno before the intake was installed, and we saw numbers of 382 horsepower and 359 foot-pounds of torque with the stock intake and no tune on the car. After the intake was installed and a Bama tune uploaded, we saw numbers of 409 horsepower and 391 foot-pounds of torque. That makes for a peak gain of 27 horsepower and 32 foot-pounds of torque. Like usual, peak gains are always nice to know, but what's most important are the curve gains. The curve gains are the gains that you're going to notice in your driving. And you're looking at 36 horsepower and 44 foot-pounds of torque at 4,300 RPM. The requirement of a tune is driven by the mass airflow size. This intake comes with a 110mm MAV, which is larger than the stock MAV. You don't get a new sensor here, but the housing itself is the larger 110mm size, and an aftermarket intake can only go so big with the mass airflow size before the car is going to need a computer tune. The computer calibration cannot correct itself for the greater amount of air that the larger housing will allow past the sensor, so that's why this intake requires a tune. If you were looking for an intake that does not require a tune, you need to find one with a smaller mass airflow housing size, like the Air Raid or the enclosed CNL option. You won't see the same performance gains that you would with a no tune required intake that you'd see on one that does require a tune, unless you end up tuning the car later on or pairing the intake with a tune right away, even though it's not required. But the power benefits are only one part of the equation here with the JLT. Because this is an open element style airbox, you're going to be getting more engine noise than before with a factory sealed airbox. If that's something that you're after, then you'll not be disappointed here. Although, if you prefer to keep things quiet, you might want to stick with the sealed airbox instead. This cold air intake does come with a reusable high flow filter, and it's a 5x9 power stack air filter. That means when it comes time, you can just clean and re-oil the filter. You won't need to purchase a new filter. And the heat shield is a roto-molded ABS plastic, and you can see how this whole setup is much more attractive than the factory airbox is under the hood. It's a nice matte black, and this is exactly what I consider a classic cold air intake look. It's simple but clean in my opinion. And JLT is going to give you everything that you need for the install. You have your intake tube, silicone coupler, power stack air filter, the heat shield, and clamps, and all of the hardware that's going to be needed. As far as price, you can expect to spend about $350. This is pretty much in line with your other cold air intake options. Now there are a few that are slightly more expensive, but generally speaking, cold air intakes currently range from $300 to $385 without a handheld tuner. When it comes to the install, this is going to be an easy 1 out of 3 wrenches in the difficulty meter. You can plan on spending an hour of your time getting this installed. Like I mentioned earlier, this intake will come with all of the items that you'll need to complete the install. All you really need to complete the install is a few basic hand tools and a flat head for the plastic pins. This is probably one of the easiest mods that you can tackle with your new Mustang. All that you're looking at doing is removing the factory airbox. Remove the inlet tube from the air filter and the throttle body, and disconnect the airbox from the inner fender, and we're just talking about a few bolts and clamps to get that done. The JLT installs the same way that the factory airbox came out, starting with the air duct first, and that just goes right into the factory location. Just put on your new couplers and clamps, slide the airbox in. Once you have everything installed and lined up properly, you can tighten down all the clamps and you'll be good to go. That's going to do it for this review of the JLT Cold Air Intake for the 2015 and newer GT. You can always check it out more online right here at AmericanMuscle.com.